Hey everyone, welcome back to Transform Your Workplace, the show where we dig into leadership, culture, and what it actually takes to build a workplace people want to be part of. I'm your host, Brandon Laws, and today's show is brought to you by Xenium HR. If you run a growing business, you know how this goes. Every payroll question opens up 5 HR questions. Every status change sets off a wave of paperwork, and most companies have it scattered across vendors who don't coordinate. Xenium brings it all under one roof. Their complete HR and payroll service gives you a dedicated team of experts who become your HR team, so you can focus on what you do best, growing your business. Learn more at xeniumhr.com. All right, today my guest is a returning guest, James Ferguson. He's back on the show to talk about his new book, Seek the Good and Celebrate. James wrote this one out of his cancer journey in 2021, and it lays out a very good leadership framework called CONFETTI that's built for leaders at any level. In this conversation, we talk about what it takes to keep showing up when things get hard. James shares the mindset shift that took him from protecting his team to preparing them. And we get into why engagement is a practice and satisfaction is just a promise. There's good stuff in here. Let's get into it. Here's my conversation with James Ferguson. James, it is so good to have you back on the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Brandon, thank you so much. So excited to be here. Can't wait to tell you about my book. Woo!
Seek the Good and Celebrate, how to elevate
Yes,
the way
sir.
you live, lead, and lift your teams. When is this out?
5-5. You know why?
5-5.
Because it's going to be a 5 out of 5. Let's go.
5 out of 5, Cinco de Mayo.
Yes, sir.
So you've been working on this book. I got a chance to read the excerpt and I can't wait to get into it. But you share that the mantra, Seek the Good and Celebrate, was born during 12 weeks of chemotherapy. And I think this is back in 2021 that you went through this. So that's something you and I had never talked about on this show in the first couple times that we talked. And I believe it probably happened in between the episodes that we'd aired.
did,
But
yeah.
how did that experience reshape the way you think about your life and leadership and culture and the things that you talk about?
I think the way that it shaped or reshaped things is, I always saw myself as a positive guy, an encourager, someone that tries to lift others. And when you face something like that, it really tests you. It tests you to see if you're going to live it or if you're going to leave it. And when I got diagnosed with cancer, I hadn't seen a doctor in years. So when it happened, it moved really quickly. You go from diagnosis to surgery to treatment. And then ultimately, I landed in an additional surgery that was necessary because treatment didn't work. And that journey really shaped who I am today. And I found that when I wrote my first book, I was tested in life in different ways to see if I could live that. And now as I'm writing this new book, I wrote this new book, like the same thing. That whole process was teaching me who I am, how you need to show up through resilience and all that. And every Friday, or Friday as I call it, I would take a minute to write a thank you note to my nurses, celebrating the journey and the progress thus far. And every Friday after I did that, I would visualize myself completing treatment. And in that, I would visualize myself throwing confetti. And so that really became, obviously, confetti in my first book was all about the transferring power of recognition and reward. But as I went through my cancer journey, it was part of who I was, but again, I had to live it. And so I really visualized myself like, that's what I'm going to do when I finish this thing. Everyone else rings a bell, but for me, I'm going to throw confetti. And it was what motivated and manifested the results. And on that day, it was such an amazing day. Hard day, though, because it was during COVID. So the only person that could even be there was my wife.
Right.
Through treatment, I didn't really even have anyone next to me because of that. But that day came and it was exactly what I envisioned. I threw the confetti. I cried. It was an emotional day. But it was a week that we won and a journey that was tough. But again, it taught me resilience and it translated perfectly into leadership because at the end of the day, how you show up as a leader, not just in the good times, but in the bad times, really defines who you are and what you're going to be able to accomplish as a team.
Sure does. I'd read I think it's in the intro of this book that you had lost your job the same day you got your diagnosis, and your wife went into premature labor during the first week of your treatment. That's a lot. There had been times where you're just like, I'm done with this. Like, I can't, or probably feeling of like, poor me. How did you feel in those moments?
Yeah, I mean, naturally you do, right? You focus on what's happening to you. And yeah, going through the writing process of this, it was very emotional for me because I had to relive it. And as I was writing the book, it's interesting, it was way more detailed when I first wrote it. And I realized that emotional toll wouldn't translate well into the rest of the book. And so I had to really make it more summarized. But
Yeah.
yeah, the day I got diagnosed, I got a call that they were downsizing my job and then I was being let go. The day that I got surgery to remove the cancer in my body, when the doctor was wheeling me back, he wrote a X on my arm where they're gonna on the side on which they're gonna operate. It's like a normal procedure. And I was freaking out. Like I said, I hadn't been to the doctor in 10 years. So like this is all happening very fast. And it's
Yeah.
obviously an extreme version of anything you'd go through from a health perspective. But in that moment, I saw hope. I felt like I was being carried through it. And I actually have a tattoo. You can see it's a cross
Yeah.
in that exact spot. And it's interesting because I get tattoos like that, and people are like, why would you put something that was so difficult, so visually near you, and you get to see it every day and stare it in the face? And for me, it's a reminder. I mean, I think we all need to realize that we try to put hard stuff behind us and leave it where it was, but it's important to keep it front and center. Remember how it shaped you. Because, yeah, I mean, the next thing that happened was in my first week of treatment, I wound up passing out because of dehydration. So I went to the hospital and the ambulance took me there and I was there for a couple hours. And again, this is the heat of COVID. So it was a wild experience, not let alone like wondering what's wrong with me. They check my head and my heart. Everything's good. It winds up just being dehydration. But when they take me home, I was there sleeping for a couple hours and my wife wakes me up. She's like, James, wake up. James, wake up. And she was pregnant, but she wasn't due yet. And the stress of that day led for her water to break. And so we went right back to the hospital. I was just at hours ago to have my youngest daughter. And in that moment, right, back to your point, I'm thinking the worst. I'm thinking one of the hardest days of my life is about to get way worse, right? Because she's not due for a couple of weeks. But what I realized, again, with that perspective, to seek the good and celebrate, is that I had to pass out and go to that ER to be able to feel good enough to be there for her
Hmm.
and for my daughter in that moment. And not even that, had she had her name's Nora, weeks later as she was due, I would have been way worse off. The compound effect of the chemo would have been way worse on me. I would have felt way worse mentally, physically, emotionally. So all of that had to happen for that to be what it was. And it's hard to see that sometimes, a lot of times. But this perspective of seek the good and celebrate really shaped who I am today, how I got through that experience, and how I lead my teams now.
Tell me about that, like, the transformation that you went through. Like, you were a certain person before all this happened, and then these moments all compounded. That does a lot to a person. What kind of person are you now?
What kind of person am I now? Ooh, I always try to be an inspiring person, right? And an inspiring person in the earlier me was someone who shared positive quotes and gave high fives. But inspiration comes from those moments of resilience when things are not going your way, when morale is down and business is down and culture is cracking. And who you show up in those moments. Do you lean in or do you lean back and let someone else take the reins? Like in those moments is when you really see who you are as a leader and your team is observing that. And so going through that challenging thing, I'm like, I can really do anything. Like, actually, I can do anything. This was the hardest thing I've ever done. If I can get through that, I can accomplish anything. And that doesn't mean just going through more hard things. That means
Mhm.
putting my effort into positive things that can then help others and grow me as an individual and support my family. So, from that moment, I started to build out a different keynote, which ultimately led to me seeing that there's a book here. And that led to the two of them kind of coming to at the end of last year. And here we are with the book coming out in May.
I think in those moments of hard times, I've been through them too. I think we're wired to have a negativity bias, so it's easy to, like, look at
Always.
all the things that are going wrong and just stay in that mode. But when you were in chemo, you were writing thank you notes and sharing gratitude with people and looking for the good. Like, What do you think that did for you, seeking the good and focusing on that? Do you think it got you through those hard times?
Yeah, I think it definitely did. I think having an attitude of gratitude will definitely support you in any phase of your life. But it's not something you want to, just put into practice when it's hard. You want to do it all the time and make it a consistent habit for you. That kind of leads perfectly into where the rest of the book goes, because if I was able to describe it best, is it's the prequel to my first book.
Hmm.
So my first book, the Confetti Culture Playbook, is kind of the initiatives that allowed me to create a positive culture as a high-end like executive leader, as a GM of a hotel, right? But this book is way more impactful to any leader at any level. You don't have to be in a position of power. You don't have to have the ability to make approvals and make financial decisions. You just make the decision for you and go take action right now. So what happened is I knew that not everybody's going to want to throw this stuff, right? It's not everybody's cup of tea. And I knew damn well that it wasn't going to become a symbol of hope for anybody else. That was very unique to me. But what I knew I could do is make it so that confetti went from hope to habits. So that leads to my leadership model, Confetti, which is an acronym broken out into basically what I would consider values or pillars. So one of the things that I face in my career, and maybe you've seen this as well, is that there's a lot of companies that have a mission and values but don't live it. And there's also companies that don't have it at all. And I was always in search of a place that I could call home, that I felt like I belonged, that I could live out their beliefs and their mission because it spoke to me. And so this book takes that idea and provides you the resources to be it for yourself and not have to find it externally, and to
Mm.
realize that seek the good is your mission and confetti is your values. And if you live that every single day, you will absolutely elevate the way you live, lead, and lift your teams.
It's so fascinating, the parallels between what you went through and especially in COVID, you're so isolated and you feel like this is happening to me. Leadership is like that too in a lot of ways. It's like you're dealing with all the shit, and so it's incredibly isolating as a leader
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways. And like your point you just made about you can now find internal motivation to seek the good instead of external validation.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to do though.
It
But
is hard to do.
does this model help
It
people?
does. It's a
Yeah.
very practical model. So I'll share it with you. So it's celebrate often, ownership mindset, nurture trust, fueled by feedback, engage with intention, train and develop, thankfulness is a habit, and inspire daily. And in the book, each chapter is one of those, and it breaks down how, as a leader, you can build that as a habit so that you can go practice it tomorrow. And it gives you practical strategies to go take action and gain traction. I knew that if I created this framework, again, maybe not everyone's throwing it, maybe not everyone is inspired by it, but it could absolutely become a leadership model that anyone could follow at any level of an organization and make a positive impact with their team. And I finally feel like I made my own mark, if that makes sense. Like, to a certain sense, as a leader, you're kind of everything you've ever experienced. But now I feel like I've made something that's mine and that can
Mhm.
really help people. And yeah, I'm just really excited to get out there.
Talk to me about the celebrate portion of this. How does this show up in your day to day, like both in your personal life and at work?
Well, stay ready so you don't have to get ready, because I have confetti on me all the time. So yesterday we were actually at my mother-in-law's and I threw confetti at her when we celebrated her birthday. But yeah, I think celebrate often is literally that. I think a lot of times we can get caught up in the comparison, right? Or that we didn't hit the ultimate milestone. And so we push off celebration, or we celebrate others but won't celebrate ourselves. And at the end of the day, you have to be comfortable and consistently celebrating you before you really feel comfortable doing it for others. And that's a big piece of my keynote too. When I go through that portion of my keynote, celebrate often, we take a moment to celebrate ourselves, because again, we're always going to someone else's birthday, someone else's
Yeah,
promotion,
right.
someone else's this. But how often do we stop and do it for ourselves? And if I'm being honest with you right now, I contemplated whether I should have a book launch party, because I'm like, do I want to do that? Like, but it's weird. We all experience it, right? So I wrote this book. It doesn't mean that I don't experience it. In fact, I do just as much as everybody else. And it's important to build the habits to celebrate yourself, to not get caught up in comparison, and to really focus on celebrating the progress and the effort versus the outcomes.
Mm-hmm. This is the way I feel, at least, is like as a leader, you got to celebrate other people. And maybe that's part of this, but like celebrating myself or making myself the center of something is really hard for me. It makes me uncomfortable. And I often deflect. If somebody shares something or celebrates me, I often like give it right back to them. But is there a way in which I could celebrate myself internally, like, or in private? Like, have you done anything like that where it's just like, quick wins for yourself?
Yeah. So what I do, and I share this in the book, and it actually falls into the thankfulness is a habit chapter. But every Friday or Friday, I have a gratitude jar that I write down something that I'm grateful for. Now, most times it happens to be the win of the week. And so I actually take a look at the week. Like there's things that happen all week, positive and negative, right? Everyone has that. You could have a flat tire, someone could pass away, you could be passed up on a promotion, you could whatever. But there's always good to be found. And if you pause, reflect on that Friday, kind of in the same way I used to write the thank you notes through treatment, I pause, reflect, write that on a Post-it note and put it in the jar. And then from that, once a
Mm.
month, every quarter, I can pull all of them out and go through them and remind myself that even though right now, maybe the darkest time I remember, there's been a lot of good that's happened around this moment, and this doesn't define me. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in that. Like, a lot of people, I'm sure you've said it, I've said it, right? Is I just want this year to be over, right? Like, I think we've all been guilty of saying that.
Oh yeah.
Now, the challenge is that we say it in February, not December. And so we wind up by saying that out loud. It's contagious. We're basically saying we're going to give up on this year because there's nothing else good that can come
Yeah.
from it. And in fact, I just want whatever this is I'm going through to be away. But you know this, you get the January 1, it doesn't wash away, whatever it
No.
is, you're still facing it. So you can either choose to deal with it or choose to avoid it. But, if you don't change it, you choose it. And so it's very important that you pause, reflect, celebrate the things that are going well while still, digesting everything else. But it's really important to put that into a habit for sure.
It's so wild because recently I caught myself wanting to fast forward like the day, and then I'm like, oh, I actually just want to get to this week. Actually, if I could just get to next week or the next weekend, then I just like I caught myself and I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And so I brought myself to the present, and I just was like, I'm gonna take this head on. And I do think like the reflection and just focusing on the good actually helped me get through those moments, because I don't know what I was dealing with at the time, but I was just like not wanting to deal with it. But I found my
Totally.
way out of it. And I do think the celebration and gratitude is the only way to get through it.
Yeah, and the balance of this book is, it's built on resilience and fueled by recognition. And to your point, like life, things don't get any easier, right? So like to your
Yeah.
point, you're like, oh, if I could just get to next week, or if I could just get to, June and it's warmer out and
Always
I'll feel
something.
better and I'll do this. And it's something different's going to be going on, right? It could be the same thing, it could be something new, but either way, difficult doesn't go away. And so we just get better at dealing with hard stuff. And that's where this perspective of see the good really helps, that is because when you look at something difficult that you will absolutely face, how you look at it changes your perspective and changes your world, right?
Talk to me about the ownership, the O in confetti. How does this
It's my
show up?
favorite. It's my favorite
Oh, it's your
chapter,
favorite.
man.
I was
It's
gonna
my
ask
favorite
you
chapter.
what your favorite.
Everyone would guess it was Celebrate Often, which I get, right?
I would have
But
figured as much. I was gonna ask you what your favorite one was, and now we know.
yeah, yeah. So ownership mindset is really setting the tone for you as a leader to have that mindset, but also to instill in others, right? And I think a lot of times as leaders, leaders that create dependence are not going to be successful, right? You want to create ownership in the mindset of your team members. And so if you're getting calls late at night about, hey, how do I do this? Or how should I do this? That doesn't mean that you're a good leader. It doesn't mean that you have all the answers. It means that you haven't properly equipped your team. And in the book, I share how a coach, we have the tournament happening, I think this afternoon, back on Sweet 16.
Mhm.
And, when a coach has a terrible game and the team fails and it doesn't go well, like the coach doesn't say, oh man, these guys are terrible. If I had the ball, I would have taken it over and won the game. Like, no, you can either blame it or you can claim it. And in that moment, we have to remember that as leaders, coaches understand that their job is to prepare their team against that opponent on that floor that day. And the same thing applies to us as leaders. Sometimes we get promoted into these leadership roles and we think because we got promoted because we're good at our job that we should keep doing that as the leader. But we're not responsible for the job anymore. We're responsible for the people that are responsible for the job. And so we need to create that ownership mindset, equip them, and shift our mindset from protect to prepare. Because when we're protecting, we're jumping in, we're saving them time, we can do it better. And this is naturally a progression for us as leaders. But the leader that you want tomorrow is the one that you didn't invest time in today. And it is so important to take the time to invest in your team and to prepare them. And in my first book, I wrote a letter to my daughter before she was born, my firstborn. And in it basically says, like, I can't protect you from everything that's going to come your way, but I can prepare you, and so I will. And the same thing applies as leaders, right? We can't protect our team from everything that's going to come their way, but we can prepare them, and so we should.
That's powerful. How does that show up in a day-to-day? How do we prepare our people? Because like you were saying earlier, as a leader, sometimes it's like, nobody could do as good as me, or I need to do it for them, or they just like, they're too hands-on. They should be more hands-off and let people fail and have the resilience that we were talking about earlier. But how does this show up in a day-to-day?
I think partly it's asking questions. I found that as I've grown as a leader is asking questions and allowing people to discover it. I've obviously found that out as a parent too, because you can tell your kids as much as you want till you're blue in the face, but they're not going to do it until they're ready. And usually that's when they discover it the hard way. And so that's what I would say as a leader is to if someone comes to you, right, at the base level and they're like, hey, what do I do here? Or what would you do? Then you flip it and you ask them, like, what are the best case scenarios for you to do in this situation? What would you do if I wasn't here? And that way it gets them thinking on their own. And then you can guide them through without any real friction. But yeah, it's definitely important to also set up time for like training and stuff. And I think a lot of times we allow other people to dictate our calendar when we really have the power to dictate ourselves. So in the same way that like, if you wanted to meet with me at 2:00 today, but I had a time for myself from 2 to 3 where it was non-negotiable. I'm not meeting with anyone. It's my time to do X, Y, Z. Then I would get what I wanted done during that time. But a lot of times we feel pressure that somehow you're going to know that I'm using the time for myself to better someone else or myself. And so I don't want you to think that, so I'm going to change my schedule around for you. But it's so important to understand that you got to make time for what matters. And when you schedule that time, whenever it is during the day, to do something like that, move a prospect, a project, or a person forward, you got to stick to it. Just like you would if your boss wanted to meet with you, you got to have that commitment to yourself and have it be non-negotiable. And then you realize that you do have time for things and that you can really start to accomplish and lean in and pour into people to help them be better leaders as well.
Let's talk about the engage part of CONFETTI framework. I think often leaders fall into the trap of focusing on employee satisfaction rather than employee engagement. Can you talk about the differences of those and why engage made it in your framework instead?
I think satisfaction, going back to how my book in the beginning, in my first book was like, high level leadership based and as a GM, and this one's really at any level, is that engagement is the difference between the two is satisfaction is a promise. Engagement is a practice, right? And that's what this book is all about, is putting things into practice. Satisfaction costs a lot of money. Engagement at the end of the day costs little to nothing. And satisfaction is very transactional. You come work for me, I'll give you these benefits. You come do this, I'll give you that. Where engagement is transformational, right? When you're actively out there with your team and you're connecting and building relationships and having conversations and helping them discover things and then building programs around the things that you want to see improve. All these things start to lead into engagement, which then transforms your team and transforms your culture and your outcomes. And so a lot of times people don't know the difference. But again, in the most simplest form, one is a promise, one is a practice. And for me, it's all about taking action, right? Because we can talk about a lot of good stuff, but if we're not doing something differently after I speak, after you read my book, after you hear me on a podcast, then I didn't do my job and I failed, and I need to take that feedback, fueled by feedback, and go do something different.
Feedback is so important. It's also part of the framework. How do you go about giving feedback? I know you're really good at this. We've talked about this in previous podcasts, but how does this look on a day-to-day with your people?
I think the best way I can describe it, and don't get me wrong, like getting feedback is tough. Let me share this first because I want to help everyone understand that like We all get feedback and no one likes it and it's hard to digest. As I was building my keynote last year, I was trying new things, implementing my story, sharing a lot, getting emotional. And through that journey, I realized that it wasn't landing the way I wanted it to.
Hmm.
And I had clients share that was the case. Not that it was a failure or anything, but that piece of it didn't land the way we hoped. And for me, it was hard to hear that because that's my story. It's what I thought was most impactful, and I was inspired to share it. As I'm writing this book, I was forced to live it, right? You either live it or you leave it. And I was like, damn, this is the world teaching me that I need to be fueled by feedback. So instead of getting all stuck in my emotional state of, oh, why is she saying that? Why are they saying this? Why can't I do it? I said, they're telling me for a reason. The reason is because they care. And for that reason, I'm going to do something differently. And so I pivoted quickly and it completely
Hmm.
transformed where I was headed. Same with my book. So I wanted to share that because it's important to know that if you don't like it, it's okay, but to know that you got to take action anyway if you get it. And then the other piece to it for, those that want to provide it, when you shift your focus from what you want from people to what you want for people, everything changes, right? Because if I want something from you, I expect this and this and this, and you better do it or else, the energy is different. The way I speak to you is different. The way that I approach everything about that situation is different. But if I'm coming at it for you, I want you to learn this. I want you to handle this on your own next time. I want you to thrive in this and help you grow. They receive it differently. They are grateful for it. And they're excited to see you when you walk down the hallway, not in fear and with anxiety. So that shift can really help you feel better about it. But as you said a moment, you still feel it. I still feel it. The key is getting more reps in. So the more comfortable you
Yeah.
have having conversations, the easier all of it gets. And the same thing goes with celebration, right? Celebration doesn't come naturally to everybody, but celebration isn't always throwing confetti. It's just having a conversation like, hey, I just saw you do this. It caught my eye. Here's why.
Mm.
Great job. Do it again. Same thing with coaching. It's not like you're in my office getting written up. It's a conversation about, hey, what
Right.
do you think we could do differently here? How can I help support you in the future? I want you to make a decision next time. So it's like, I think sometimes we make it this bigger thing, but the more comfortable we get with having conversations, the easier both sides of those get.
Feedback is such a two-way street too. So I think having those conversations regularly, often, and even in the beginning of a relationship, just having some kind of ground rules around like, you can give me feedback, I'm going to give you feedback, and we're all to get better. Are you having those types of conversations with a new relationship? Like, how do you set the tone as a leader?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a two-way street. You have to be open to it. I think your team is going to mirror what you model, right? So if you're not good with
Right.
feedback, they're not going to be good with feedback. If you don't follow the directions you provide, then they're not going to follow the directions you provide. So it's very important that you model it and that you share your faults through it too, right? Like if you make a mistake and they bring it to you, then let them know that you own it, right? So it goes back to like blame it or claim it. Like if you blame it on somebody else, that saves you from the emotional issue that you're facing in front of you. But everyone saw that, knew the difference, and will definitely hold it against you. So it's important to just be real, raw, and share what's going on. So if you messed up, own it. And then let's find a solution together. And don't always feel like you have to have the answer either. I think as leaders, we always feel like we have to like know it all. And honestly, some of my greatest things that I share on LinkedIn and in my books and all this stuff is from having a team that has collective responsibility, wants to be better, and shares great ideas through it.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a key piece for sure.
The I and confetti is inspire. How does this show up on a regular basis? And like any actionable tips that you can give people? I find this to be really challenging at times, especially as there, externally, there's so many things happening in the world. Internally, in our cultures, we might have drama and chaos, but how do we find inspiration in those tough times?
Yeah, I think inspiration, it's easy to share a quote. It's easy to be energized and excited. It's who you are when things get tough. And our biggest wins aren't won on our best days, they're won when we show up anyway. And it directly applies to my cancer journey. Like I often said, keep showing up. Like when things get hard, keep showing up. You have to really have that lens of seek the good and celebrate because what it allows you to do, it helps you reframe everything. Like, is this happening to me or is it happening for me? Is it setting me back or is it setting me up for something even greater? And whether it's a lost job, a cancer journey, a flat tire, whatever, everything is happening for you. And you realize that with hindsight, right? Hindsight is 2020. They say that for a reason, right? You look back, you're like, oh, I did have to lose my job to get the job I love. I did have to end that relationship to find my wife or my husband. I had to go through these difficult things to get there. So the key is to know that you're definitely in hotels, as an example, right? That's where I come from. Like, the hot water is going to go down. There's going to be a dirty room. There's going to be a screaming guest. Those are definitely happening every day. There's nothing you can do to avoid them. So how do you show up in that moment, right? Like, when the business is down, when morale is down and culture is cracking, do you show up or do you disappear? It's just about understanding that resilience is the key, and to keep showing up even when you don't feel like it, even when things aren't going your way, because that makes all the difference. And no one's expecting perfection. But when things are hard and you go hide in your office, that's going to break down trust. That's going to make everything go much harder. But if you're out there in the trenches helping them face it and be in the mix with it, they're going to feel like they're seen, heard, and supported. And at the end of the day, that's what every employee wants, is to be seen, heard, and supported. So that's really how you inspire daily, is showing up when it's hard and showing up when it's positive and being the same guy or girl, no matter what.
You said hindsight's 2020, and I'm curious if you could visit yourself in that recliner alone during cancer treatment, what would you say to yourself? Or would you say anything?
Damn. Sorry, that's a good question. I think, again, in most simplest terms, just keep showing up, because everything you want is on the other side of this. And yeah, it's happening now. And again, in that moment, I couldn't see it. But yeah, I would just tell myself to keep showing up. And anybody listening too, like, everybody faces stuff. It doesn't have to be a cancer diagnosis. Losing a loved one, losing a job. There's so many things that we all face. You faced that I don't even know about, right? But the key is to show up. Keep showing up every day, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're tired, stressed, just keep showing up.
James, thank you for sharing all that. And you got through it, didn't you? Cancer-free, you got a book coming out on May 5th. Things are good. And you're here because you went through those tough times. So I appreciate you sharing all the good stuff, the wisdom, your story. It is inspiring. So I appreciate you. Where can people find the book or connect with you?
So yeah, LinkedIn is always James Ferguson. Find me there with the confetti emoji. But then you can go to my website, confetti-man.com. I got resources, books, videos, all kinds of stuff that would add value to you. So definitely check it out.
My guest today has been James Ferguson, the author of Seek the Good and Celebrate. Thanks for coming on, my friend.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Xenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Xenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent, so discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.